Good day, all. I know on our previous rides we've been talking about triggers, and we'll come back to triggers, of course, throughout our trips and everything. But I think we've got a good enough basis on that to where we can move on to some of the other things, and we can just revisit it periodically. I had one of my coworkers at work say that identifying and putting a label on it has helped him out. He said he's always known that there were certain things that got him riled up or got in his head, but actually putting a label on it and calling it a trigger, he says now when those instances come up, he's able to react differently because he notices more what's going on, and he's able to identify it quicker, and so he's able to nip it in the bud or change his environment or change the people he's around or change his interaction so the end result is different from what it used to be. So just getting the idea of triggers in your head is enough foundation for you guys to figure out a lot of it on your own. So I want to move on. So what I want to talk about today was sustainers. And if you remember, I said sustainers can either keep you lifted up, keep you buoyed, keep you on an even keel, or sustainers can cause you to drift into, or maybe even just abruptly go into a state of depression or anger or low self-esteem. So I want to talk about sustainers today. One of the biggest sustainers that you'll encounter in life is people. Yes, alcohol and drugs are sustainers, sex are sustainers, all these other things can be sustainers, but people, woo, we all know that people can be a brutal mess at times. People, how they treat you, how they act towards you, strangers, people they can cause you anxiety, they can cause you anger, they can cause you to be depressed and have low self-esteem. Or those same people 10 minutes later or 20 minutes at a different time can lift you up, they can put a smile on their face, they can make you happy, they can make you feel good about yourself, they can calm you down so that you don't get angry. People can have a lot of influence over our emotions. So you can combat that by being totally indifferent to people and not caring one whit about anyone else. Or you can counteract people by loving them. Now, writing people off is easy. You may not say it out loud, but in your heart or in your soul per se, in your innermost being, you can easily write people off and say, I'm not dealing with those people. They always make me mad. They always cause me trouble. There's too much drama when they're around. I'm writing those people off. And so you don't really care one way or another what happens to them. Actually, you may care more if something negative happens than if something positive happens, because it just doesn't get on your nerves too much. But writing people off is actually not healthy. We actually need people. Whether we want to admit it or not, we do need people in our lives. We need social interaction. So we need people. Now, you can go through life having everything be casual, so that you have no close relationships and get your social interaction that way. Or you can build up a community of people who help you to be better and help you to stay yourself and maintain and be cool. But if you build that community, we can sometimes get isolated in that community, which means that if you're not a part of this community, I'm going to write you off anyway. So still you fall back into that writing off people, which, like I said, is just not healthy. I want to try to convince you to turn your isolated community into a global community by learning how to just love people in spite of themselves. It's easy to love people who treat you right, give you things, love on you, cherish you. It's easy to love those people. What about those rude, irresponsible people who like drive crazy on the highway? And you know I spend a lot of time on the highway, so I had to bring those people up. They people who blow at you for following the rules because they want you to break them. You know, like they want you to turn right on red, even though the sign says no turn on red. And they'll blow and they'll throw the finger up at you, and they'll all this in your, and you look in your mirror and you see all that. You're like, man, what did I ever do to you? I am obeying the rules. So you have, you know, people just who are angry, dissatisfied, or lack empathy for anyone else, and you tend to encounter those people on a daily basis, and you say, holy man, you expect me to love those people? Yeah. Do you love those people? Yeah. I'll admit sometimes they hurt my feelings when they're doing all that mess, when they're lying on me or pushing my buttons on purpose, or doing things to glorify themselves at my expense. Hey, yeah, I admit, you know, it can be hurtful, but I still love them. Because I found that through loving people, even the bad ones, even the mean ones, it helps me to actually stay out of a state of depression. It helps me by being helpful to others and by loving others. It helps me negate a lot of those triggers that normally would send me over the edge. So when trying to walk a pathway of love, when you're surrounded by hate, you're going to have to equip yourself with some tools, some tricks, just all kinds of little things to help you not go off on them and still show love in spite of their actions. I've trained myself. In the beginning, it was actual training. Though I didn't call it that at the time, it was actually training myself to love people in spite of. Now, everyone I meet, I instantly love them. Including the guy who cussed me out the other day. I have no reason, I can't figure out why. I don't know if maybe he's trying to get over. I didn't see his signal. I don't know, but he's really sat next to me and cursed me out through my window. But I still loved him. Later on, when he was doing all his antics and he needed to get over, I slowed down and gave him enough room so he can change lanes. I didn't road rage him. I didn't cut up on him. I didn't blow and curse him back. I still loved him. And one of the ways you can learn to do this is by having empathy. And though you don't know that person, you can actually create empathy by giving them an excuse for their behavior. It sounds funky, but by giving people an excuse for their behavior, it allows you to not be as affected by their behavior. So here's a trick you can use. The next time, and this works for everything, but I'm going to use traffic because, hey, we're driving around. The next time someone cuts you off or gives you the finger or zips in front of you and almost causes you to crash, as much as you want to curse them out, I want you to think of the worst thing that could have happened to that person. You say, wait a minute, you want us to love him, but you want us to think of the worst thing that can happen to him? Yes. Let me give you an example. He cut me off because he's trying to get to the hospital because he just got the phone call that his child was hit by a car when he's riding his bike. So his son is in ICU. He's trying to get there. He's all frazzled. His mind is not really on his driving because he's so anxious to get to his son. He's scared to death about the condition of his child. I can cut him some slack because he's got to get to the hospital. So by making the worst case scenario, all of a sudden I've caused some empathy to be created between me and the unsafe driver. Now, it may not be right, it may not be fair for him to behave that way. Everybody's got problems, everybody's got trouble, sure, yeah. But in this instance, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say to myself, this man, this woman has got to get to the hospital as fast as possible, because if he doesn't get there in time, he may not get to see his child alive. He may miss his last breath or her last breath. So by creating that empathy, I've now created, driving up in the carpool line, so I'm gonna have to cut this one short. Sorry. But by creating empathy with this person, stranger that it is, I find that I can forgive them. And a big portion of loving people is forgiving them. So now I've forgiven this person. I'm not even bent out of shape that they acted that way. So if I get a mile down the road and I see that they've caught a flat, or they've had a sideswipe the guardrail or something, and they're pulled over and they need help, I can easily pull over and help that person because of the empathy I have for them, because I love this person. I feel for them. Now, they may just be a prick. That's why they're driving that way. But in my mind, they had a dire emergency that was causing them not to think straight and to behave irrationally on the highway. And this works in almost any situation. You're in the grocery store line, and maybe you work there, or maybe you're the next in line, and you know sometimes you get behind those irate people who just give the clerk a hard time. Instead of taking it personally and getting all bent out of shape, instantly and immediately, if you train yourself, what flashes in your mind is, she just lost her job. She's going through a bad divorce. They're fighting over the children. They're fighting over the house. She doesn't know what she's going to do. You know, she's been a housewife. She doesn't have a job. And now she has all this pressure on her. And so, yes, she gets up here and the price is not ringing up right. And it's just the final straw in the day of bad news. And it's just too much for her. So now I've created that empathy between us, and I can look over the fact that she's getting on my case for something that's out of my control. I don't go around putting the prices on the products. I just ring them up when you bring them up. But you're in my face and cussing me out and giving me a hard time because it's 5 cents too different. But I understand you're going through a divorce. I understand that you don't know what you're going to do now. I understand that you're in a bad spot, and you're scared, and you're worried, and you're irritated because this is someone you loved, and here they are leaving you, or whatever the circumstances behind the divorce. Man, sucks, man. I feel for you. So I can forgive you, and I can love you, So even though these are tricks, they may not be true, it still gets you in the habit. It gets you in the mind, the heart of being understanding, because sometimes people act out when they're in pain. And they act out when they're worried and when they're scared and when they're hopeless or when they're depressed, when they're sad, when they're at their wits' end. People act out, they act differently. And knowing these things, though, you don't appreciate it happening to you, you're able to show concern, you're able to show love, you're able to show care, and maybe later on in the day that person will realize that, man, I treated that person really rotten, but they still smiled at me. They didn't try to break my eggs when they when they put them in the bag. They still were cordial to me, and they still treated me with respect, even though I was being an ass. So it may cause that person to have a change of heart, or at least to pause and recognize that they were unfair to someone else, which builds empathy in them for maybe the next person they run into on that bad, horrible day they're having. So I want you to think about that, and I want you to try it. Next time someone does something that really gets under your fingernails, I want you just to find the most off the wall. It can be the most, a meteor just fell on their house that they just got through building. They built their dream home and a meteor fell out of space and crushed it. I don't care how outrageous or outlandish it may seem. I want you to practice doing that the next time you get into a situation where someone's behaving badly, or they're doing things to hurt your feelings, or being out of sorts, or just whatever. I want you to try that out. And I want you to see if it makes a difference, because it'll give you peace. Anywho, I'm in the carpool line. I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off for this trip. But we'll come back and maybe talk about some more sustainers, or maybe just talk about people and how to interact with them and learn to love them. Or maybe we'll move on to maintainers, or we might just tell another story. Hey, like I said, you never know what we're going to talk about on these trips. But I do appreciate you riding with me. I love you guys, and I care for you. I want you to just be strong, be faithful to one another, love each other, and do the best you can to build people up instead of tearing people down. Again, I love you. Take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you next time. Peace out.